I had to be perfect. The President of the United States could see something that I did. I used to scare my staff and the interns saying, look, if somebody is coming to work out before they go to work and you sleep in and they can't exercise, they can't shower, and World War III starts because you couldn't get up, you're fired. Out of 11 years, we were late twice. I used to say I got lucky, but I know that's not true. I put myself in the right positions.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new edition of the None of Your Business podcast. And if you've ever wondered how we keep our presidents in tip-top physical shape, oh, you're in for a real treat today, because we're going to be hearing from someone who has served across multiple presidencies, helping to keep the office of the president in good physical fitness, tip-top shape. But not only that, we're going to dive into the concepts of artificial intelligence and, of course, how we are tracking through all of these different wearables. We've got the rings, the watches, the information that's available to us, and all of the great breakthroughs that can help us to live better, live longer, live wiser, and live more impactful lives. We're with Dr. Ted Vickey. Welcome to the None of Your Business podcast.
Thanks for having me, Shawn.
Of course, we're going to have to start with the White House. Somehow you end up running the fitness program for the office of the White House. But then I've learned that that extended beyond. It wasn't like for just the president and the first lady or the president and the vice president. This turns into a much bigger initiative. Tell us, first of all, how do you even get a job like that?
I'm going to date myself. I was at Penn State, degree is exercise and sports science, needed to do an internship, and I had a love of politics. My first degree at Penn State was political science. I broke my ankle playing water polo, which is another story, but I switched my degree to exercise and sports science. I wanted to help people. Before the internet, I was working for the library at Penn State in our department, and a letter came in from the White House talking about this internship that they had. And I thought, I'll intern at the White House. So I snail mailed, USA Today, the White House, ComSat, which was a satellite company, and the LA Lakers. Those were the four companies I applied to do an internship. I went to the White House first. They said, we want you. I don't remember the other two interviews in DC. I never made it to LA. So I ended up at the White House as an intern under the first Bush. And looking back now, that changed my life because it opened so many doors. And I didn't know at the time, but they were probably vetting me to come back. I went off and I worked for a consulting company. I was at the HUD Fitness Center. And then in 1994, my old boss called. She said, I met the man of my dreams. I'm moving to Detroit. You want to buy my company? She was marrying Dan Quill's Secret Service agent. And it was a contract at the White House. And look, I was a scientist. I was exercise science. I had no business acumen. I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought to myself, what's the worst thing that'll happen? Well, I moved back to Erie, Pennsylvania with mom and dad and start my career over. So I went. And I remember the first day I was there and walking into the building, it's just this incredible opportunity. But you're right. That opened up so many doors. And I knew that every one of my competitors wanted my client. So I had to be perfect. And I think it's one of the detriments that I have now is I'm a recovering perfectionist, but it had to be perfect. The President of the United States could see something that I did. I used to scare my staff and the interns saying, look, if somebody is coming to work out before they go to work and you sleep in and they can't exercise, they can't shower, and World War III starts because you couldn't get up, you're fired. Out of 11 years, we were late twice, opening the front door. So I used to say I got lucky, but I know that's not true. I put myself in the right positions.
What's the coolest story that you've seen working there in politics in Washington, D.C., tied to fitness?
And this could only happen in Washington, D.C. I walked into the men's room, the locker room, and the scales with the little slider up top. There was a politician there with a dime changing the scale. I said, what are you doing? He said, I weighed too much, so I changed the scale. I said, how long have you been doing this? 3 months. So every person that weighed themselves in the men's room at the White House on the scale, they were lighter than they really were. So we actually made it part of our closing procedures. Every month we would bring out 4 45-pound plates and we would calibrate the scale. Only in DC where you can change the rules.
Wow. You were, the center was a fitness center for the office of the president and beyond. Is that correct?
It was anyone with a badge to the White House. So that could be Secret Service, the White House Military Office. You know, a lot of people don't realize the White House, you don't really work in the White House. I mean, they could probably fit 200 people in this room we're in. It's a small, confined space. By the way, don't watch any TV shows with me about the White House or any of the movies because I'll say, that's wrong, that badge is wrong. It's not like that case. So anyone that had a badge could use the facility. And it was a paid facility. It was non-taxpayers' money going into it because I lived by the Washington Post test back then. You know, don't do anything that lands on the front page of the Post. So the last thing we wanted was people thinking, oh, it's gold-plated sinks and they're using all brand new equipment. No. We had a pro shop and we would make money off of T-shirts and hats to fund our equipment for the next year.
The gym, the center, is it in the White House? Or is it, where was it?
It was in what's called the new executive office building. So there are really 3 buildings that make up the White House. You've got the White House itself that we all know. There are a handful of people in there. And like I said, the space is a commodity. I did work in the president has a fitness center on the top floor next to the Lincoln bedroom. So I did some work there. There's a second building called the old executive, which is now called the Eisenhower building. It's to the right of the White House. It's this big, ornate, Victorian-looking building. It used to be the old Department of War until the Pentagon was built. And then across the street in 1968, it's called the new Executive Office Building. It is, now it's funny to say, it's the least secure of the 3 buildings. When I went to work, I had to be x-rayed every day. I had bomb-sniffing dogs sniffing my bag. So it's a pretty secure place. So that's where the facility was because anyone could use the facility. So
wait, the facility was across the street?
It was across the street. In fact, when President Bush came in, we found that the higher level staff weren't using the facility. So we timed it. Leaving the West Wing, leaving security, crossing the street, going through security again, coming up. It took about 10 minutes. So we actually built a facility in the Eisenhower building that the senior staff had access to. So they could go there and get their workouts in.
So 2, one across the street, one next door.
One across the street, one next door,
wow.
One on the top floor, and there was one in the south lawn where the president would exercise on his elliptical machine.
Wow. All right, so you were there until how long?
I was there for 11 years. My dad said I was longer than every president except FDR.
And how many presidents did you see come through?
I entered under Bush, came back in Clinton. I left under W.
3 presidents come. Which one could bench press the most?
I would say President George W. Bush was probably one of the most fit men I've ever met.
Wow.
Yeah.
You leave the White House. Where do you go? What's next?
Well, remember, I was 24 years old when I started this company to run the fitness center at the White House. And I wasn't looking to expand, but I really wanted to. I got a call from Fruit of the Loom.
Huh.
You remember back at NAFTA when they were sending the jobs overseas and down to Mexico? Well, Fruit of the Loom did that. Bowling Green, Kentucky. The president of Fruit of the Loom called and said, do you run the fitness center at the White House? I said, yes, sir, I do. He said, good, I just hired you. Come build me a fitness center. So talk about, I wasn't marketing. Whenever I would do a proposal, I always made the final cut because everybody wanted to hear the White House stories. So it made it a little bit hard because I really didn't market. It was just more word of mouth. And we ended up having a number of contracts with the Department of Commerce, Security Exchange Commission. After 9/11, we did every TSA employee's physical fitness test. And then in 2006, my mother passed away, and I always promised her I'd get a master's degree. I didn't need it. I wanted to get it. And I said, I'm going to do something different. Mom would do something different. So I sold everything I owned. I moved to Ireland to play golf and to get a master's degree. So I did that. My master's is international business and entrepreneurship. And then the Irish government approached me and said, look, we want to increase the number of PhD exports. So they've got people like me from outside of Ireland to get a PhD from Ireland, and now I go off and, like this, I'm talking about the great educational opportunities in Ireland. So I'm the first person in the world with a PhD in wearable data.
What does that mean?
Well, my degree is actually engineering. So if you tell me back when I was at Penn State playing water polo, I have a PhD in engineering, I would have laughed at you. But really, there's a lot of data. Everyone here that has an iPhone or a watch or a Fitbit, all this data is being collected, but we're not using it. So my PhD looked at how can we, as Americans, with this smartphone that we use 24/7, I mean, some of you woke up to it today with your alarm. People have checked their email today. How can we live healthier lives with this device, which, by the way, is more powerful than the computer used to put the man on the moon back in the 70s? So this is my moonshot. This is my opportunity to help people live healthier lives by using technology that we keep in our pocket.
And how do you do that? Like, just because we monitor it, or how?
Exactly. I'm in the process now of starting a new company with two of your friends, and we are creating this dashboard. The traditional model of personal training, in my opinion, is broken. You're trading time for money. You can't really get more clients. You're going to end out of time, or you're going to price yourself out of the market. But if I can say, Shawn, I'm going to monitor you on all the days you're not with me. Let's take steps for an example. And if you don't reach your goal for your steps for that day, I'm going to ping you. I'm going to say, Shawn, what's going on? Because I think you hire a personal trainer for one of three reasons: accountability, motivation, and education. Can I do all three of those things from a smartphone? Absolutely. So I think there's this new, and I call it data-driven personal training. We're taking the data that we have. If you think about it, if you have a personal trainer, you might see them once a week. And everyone thinks they're going to have this experience of new health by seeing somebody 1 hour a week. Now, with this accountability model, we can really see some changes. So we're working with sleep coaches, we're working with chiropractors, we're working with health coaches, personal trainers to provide this information. Then what you do is take it, put it through AI, get this information, look for trends, and say, Shawn, by the way, did you know that before you golf, your heart rate spikes, or you don't sleep well the night before a golf tournament? And here's why. I remember back at the White House, I used to make answers up. Well, I don't know why you don't want to work out today. But now I can say, Shawn, you're allergic to caffeine. You had a coffee at 5 o'clock, because I see it on your log here. You didn't sleep well. You got up early this morning, so it makes total sense why today is not a day for you to go off and run a 5K. Today's a stretch day. So we're taking that data and making it actionable.
What are the other applications beyond just fitness? Because obviously in fitness, those are all great. And I think that's kind of the initial sort of craze of the wearable technology. People that were counting their steps in the Fitbit, people that wanted to monitor their activity, right? The initial activity rings in the Apple iOS system. But now we're seeing applications, even for detecting if, during COVID, pulse ox, and we're seeing applications for sleep and recovery. What are some of the current best use cases for wearable technology? And then what are some things that you see that might be coming down the road? I don't know if we've mastered blood pressure yet, but blood pressure, blood sugar, are these things that are going to be possible?
Yes, the rumor is that the Apple Watch you have on today is capable of doing blood pressure. It's not FDA approved, so they can't do it yet, but the technology is there. I think sleep is a huge one that we really don't talk about. I was born with a cleft lip. I will always have sleep apnea. I wore a CPAP for 20 years. Do you know how many times someone checked the pressure on my CPAP? 0. So now we have this tool, and we use a ring out of California. They say that it's used overseas to monitor, but also to diagnose sleep apnea. So this ring, I've worn it for the last year. I'm getting numbers that are the same as what you would get going to a sleep lab. In fact, I've gone into my sleep doctor saying, look, my numbers are wrong. Look at my scores. And they say, you can't have this information. You're not at a sleep lab. I said, I know. But look, this is my PhD. This is the data that we have. And actually now we've gotten to a point where I'm not having as many episodes at night, and I feel great.
Do you feel like it's just because you're monitoring the data helps to reduce the episodes?
No, I think it's because I'm making changes. So I can, we've talked about the Whoop earlier today. Whoop has a great monitoring system where it asks you, well, what time did you go to bed? Did you have any caffeine after 5 o'clock? Did you have exercise before? Was it strength training? Did you run? So you take all this information that you have, put it with the sleep score. Now with AI putting all of this together, we're getting some actionable data back saying, Shawn, the reason that you don't feel well in the morning is because of this.
We're getting to a place, at least for me, when I'm on social media, there's 9 million, mostly rings now, but I mean, Whoop, you wear it on your wrist or on your biceps. So many wearable devices. And then are we going to get to the point where I've got 10 rings on and 2 bracelets and a chest strap because I'm just trying to keep track of this? Or do you feel like at some point we're going to be able to consolidate all of this down? Like it won't matter what I wear. I'll just be able to get all of the thing and then just maybe have one centralized place where I'm analyzing it and be able to share it from there out to my medical or healthcare providers, my trainer, my friends, whatever. I feel like it's kind of like running away from us versus it's coming together.
Yeah, unfortunately, we still have data silos, and they're not really talking well to each other. So you've got your Fitbit information here, you have your weight information here from a Withing scale, you have your information from your Apple Health. They don't talk to each other. So the dashboard that we created is bringing that all together. So now you see this big picture of all this data. And we try to stay away from the healthcare system because the EHRs are just so confusing. You go into the doctor, they won't even look at this information because they say it was self-reported. Well, yeah, it's self-reported, but it was collected using these devices. I think we have enough wearable out there. We don't need any more devices. We need to take the data that we have, validate that data, saying, yes, this is right, and then be able to say, here's how we're going to use that data to get you healthier.
One last thing that always I've wondered, because anytime somebody starts talking about data, the entrepreneur in me gets all excited. So I'm like, wow, there's tremendous value in data. The question here, though, is if I'm monitoring my data, who owns that? Because it's going up into the wherever. Is there any risk that people are leveraging my data maybe to market to me? Am I going to start seeing like sleep apnea things on my phone because they realize that my sleep was off? Like, who owns that data and is it protected?
That's a big controversy right now. In my opinion, I own my data. There are other companies that would suggest they own the data. If you get on Facebook and look up sleep apnea, you're going to start getting those algorithms. So that information is out there already. I think people don't realize how much really is out there. One of the things that I do is I use fake names, and some of the things, I don't want people to know certain things about my health. I'll use a fake name. In fact, during my PhD, there was a scale called the Withing scale. When you stand on the scale, let's talk about this for accountability, it would tweet your weight. Oh. I used a fake name. But for 7 years, there's an account out there that is tweeting my weight every time I step on my scale. That's accountability, right? If you're hiring me to keep you healthy, and I'm saying, we're going to put your weight on Twitter, and everyone's going to know what it is, you're going to listen to what I have to say.
I agree. Wow. You're involved in this dashboard. You're involved in several other projects. What has you super excited right now in your entrepreneurial journey? I'm
super excited, and you know this, being the first franchisees for the Well Infused franchise. We're opening up in Houston and Dallas, Texas. Really, this is the culmination of everything I've done in my career, and I'm looking forward to bringing this technology to allow us to serve those that we have the privilege to serve, so they go down this path of health and they have an understanding of, you can do this. And we're here to help you. So we're real excited about the Well Infused franchise. Yeah, monitoring and then leveraging Well Infused to make those tweaks. Exactly. Looking at your blood, looking at what's going on, supplementation, exactly. IV therapy, hormone replacement, stem cells, trying to get this body of ours, this giant chemistry experiment to be all zeroed in. And no doubt, I mean, you play a very integral part in that. And so I'm super excited to see where that goes. People that are excited because too, in this podcast, people that should be reaching out to you, fitness professionals, people that are into the wearable field. You mentioned AI there briefly, and then of course in franchise development, health and wellness. How can people contact you if they want to have a conversation and talk more about all these cool things that you have going on? Well, before we do that, I have a present for you, Shawn. Okay. I wrote a book on ChatGPT in the fitness industry, and I actually created What Would Shawn Do? GBT. So if you go to tedv.link/ TED.link/Shawn, you will become a board of advisor for anybody. I've trained this ChatGPT of all the things I know about you, and I've tried it a couple of times. It's actually pretty spot on. In fact, Lacey gave her a blessing, so she knew about it, that I've been working on this. So I did that. The second thing I did from an AI perspective for service-based entrepreneurs, go to TED.link/AI. I've created a little quiz for you, and it'll tell you your readiness scale to adopt technology. You know, there's a lot of fear with AI. People think, well, it's the Terminator coming. No, it's not going to be that. Is it going to replace jobs? Yes. In my opinion, if a piece of technology can replace you, it probably should. You know, there's a word before trainer. It's personal. This technology allowing us to learn more about what it is that we can do for those that we can help serve. So I'm excited about those two things. And
say the links again for both of them?
It's TEDV.link/Shawn, SHAWN. That, if you want Shawn as a board of advisor, you do that one. TEDV.link/AI. That'll give you your readiness score. And then send that back to me. Happy to have a consultation with you, and we can figure out how AI can help you work smarter and not harder.
That's awesome. Ted, thank you so much for being on the None of Your Business podcast. You're a fantastic guest.
Thanks, Shawn.